Call committee to hold to order. We have 3 with a potential 4 items on the agenda. First off, we are going to start with the executive department. Jan?
Okay. Good evening, Council President Prince and members of the council. Tonight we're going to begin with our departmental presentations, the first of which will be at the Executive Office, followed by Community and Economic Development, and then Public Works. And time permitting, Ellen Bradley Mock has been gracious enough to indicate that she will do her presentation as well tonight if we are able to squeeze it in. And then next week, we will be back for Administrative Services, Community Services, City Attorney, Human Resources and Risk Management, if we are not able to get Ellen in this evening, Court, and Police. So with that, I will turn it over to Preeti Sridhar for her presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the quick review of the Executive Department, Executive Office, and our proposal for the 2019-2020 budget proposal for the Executive Department. The details of the budget for the department are on pages 3 to 7 in your budget document. So the Executive Department has the Mayor's Office with the Mayor, Chief Administrative Officer, the Public Defenders, which is a contractual department, the Deputy Public Affairs Department, which includes communications, legislative affairs, print shop, cable management, and the Emergency Management Department. The proposed budget by the city service areas has got safety and health, representative government, livable community, mobility, utilities and environment, as well as internal support. Our total FTEs are 13.6, and we've got operating expenditures of $4.146, $897,000, and total revenue of $1.202, $490,000. In terms of city service areas, safety and health and representative government are our 2 major areas of service. We've been looking at various performance measures and reviewing these. From 2014 onwards, we've been doing our surveys to review and check on our results for these. As you know, some of the work we do are looking at customers and the satisfaction and how we measure these. They range in terms of specifically with emergency management, we look at how we are able to keep our community safe and leverage our public and private partnerships to look at volunteer hours and our efforts with our emergency management program. In terms of representative governments, there's a range of measures we look at, from customer satisfaction, responding to our customers' requests, to our various measures in terms of interacting with our community, communication efforts, and making sure that we also look specifically at the measures of our state and legislative agenda and affairs, and we've been very good about tracking these, looking at various mechanisms, including our survey. The specific results are here. The Mayor's Office looks at our business plan and the mission statement to make sure that we provide leadership for the city to ensure that we act strategically and that we implement our business plan and the decisions and apply our decisions uniformly and expeditiously across the city. Here's a copy of our business plan, and we really work to keep this as the guiding factor for everything that we do across our city. As the mayor had mentioned last week in his budget speech, we've really looked at the key priorities to be guiding and looking at them year after year to make sure that we're on track: economic development, public safety with the police effectiveness, and really looking at working with the police in our community, the culture of our workforce, specifically at customer service, inclusion and diversity, the quality of life and looking specifically again at our legislative agenda, our priorities, and again, both federal, state, and at regional efforts.
Mr. President?
Yes, Ms. Perez.
Thank you, President. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, absolutely.
Should I assume that quality of life includes the concerns of the community about traffic and transportation?
Absolutely. So we look at this broadly, and I'll spend the next few slides, really give you visually an emphasis of, what we really have taken pride in and what we've accomplished. And as we go forward, and specifically on some of these other areas, such as the legislative priorities, we're working on bringing to you on the 8th of November our specific agenda that we hope you will adopt. But before that, we're actually setting up some meetings with you to go through some of the priorities that have emerged from the rest of the department, so that we will hear from you before we bring a final one forward to the council.
Thank you.
So like I said, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and you've seen that we've really accomplished a lot the last few years in terms of, Renton is really the place where there's been significant economic development, significant growth. Certainly we have been, leading the way in terms of aerospace, in terms of Southport, Hyatt, Sunset Park. There's an inauguration and another ribbon cutting this coming weekend, and I hope you're planning to attend. Tomorrow is the grand official ribbon cutting at Sartori. Downtown continues to be, every day something new is happening there and something wonderful is happening there. Council Member Perez, you talked about investment, transportation. It's regional as well as local. We're changing, making differences and changes in the way we're looking at our streets, at the investments we're looking at. We just had major investment at Main Street. Again, we prioritize this. We look for funds from our state. And everywhere we can leverage our dollars, we're doing that, and we will continue to do that. Again, economic development is one that it's not just a department, it's a citywide effort, and again, we lead that from the executive office. Healthcare is a major industry in Renton that's growing, that continues to grow. It brings with it jobs, it brings with it a really great quality of life. Our police department has completely, redefined our city. They are known for the relationships that they've created with the community. Once again, Coffee with a Cop has, taken on a next series, so to say. And the police department is, kind of working in togetherness with our inclusion efforts. Here are just, they're also kind of cutting leading edge in terms of social media. The drone program that the police has is one of the leading edge again in our area. Workforce culture, our lean program, our performance management, the leadership, everything is, we're really proud of the way that we're working on these efforts. Renton results and the tools that we have are, again, something that we're working to, keep honing our skills in terms of the organization. It's a 2 week, almost a month ago, time flies, our, multicultural festival was great. Thank you very much, council members, Councilmember Puvoni, for being there and, really being part of our community. We continue to, focus on this and to, take these programs really to our region. We will continue to involve our community, identify projects that are important, focus on areas that need the funding, work on the Family First Community Center. These are some more images from there. work with our human service agencies. And like I said, Julia, setting up meetings so that we can get your input on both our legislative, state, and federal and regional priorities. Our communications programs are very strong, and we keep looking at ways that we can, keep up with the changing world of communications that we have. We keep using multiple platforms. We've been doing a lot of work with language translations. We launched the new website, which is very user-friendly.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Mr. President.
Mr. Press.
Talking about the communication plan and keep up with the new platforms to communicate with our community. Does this access also include a platform for effective communication between the legislative branch and the community?
Yes. We are in the process of working on different options with social media options, and we'll be, we're looking at different policies right now for that.
I think, respectfully, that the tools that are available for the city to communicate with our constituents and our community should be a tool also for the legislative branch, and it depends of it's entirely to each one of the members of the legislative branch if we use it or not. But the tool should be there for us to communicate, because we are still in the pre-internet area in that branch, where the city obviously is advancing, communicating using new tools. So, do you think we're going to be working on that for the next year? In the next year?
I think that's an answer I'll leave to the city attorney to answer. I think the tools are all there. I think the policies are a little bit more complex, and it's not about the tools, it's about the policies that are available in terms of the legislative branch. The tools are available. It's what the RCWs allow, if I'm not mistaken.
So we have looked at some alternative ways for the legislative branch to communicate. The challenge is reconciling the forms of communication along with the other restrictions that state law requires. So the OPMA, for example, the Records Act, and those types of things. We are working with the city attorney now, who's drafted an opinion, and looking at having a conversation at a future COW, a committee of the whole meeting around that, and seeing, giving you the opportunity to discuss different means and mechanisms. This current budget, which is what we're talking about here, doesn't include any additional staff support for, the legislative branch, if you will, to provide that. So it would have to be done independently by those council members if the council so chooses to, after reviewing the legal opinion, go down some means or methods to communicate in a different way than they are currently.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to be clear if we are in the same page here. This is accordance to the Public Act, Public Disclosure Record Act. I always forget how it's called. I'm not asking to not follow the rules. I am just asking for a creative way for us to be able to communicate with following the rules of transparency. That's my only request.
Yep, I think we understand that. I think, again, when we get that opportunity to review the legal opinion from the city attorney, we'll be able to discuss some of the challenges and then see what we want to do from there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So I'll get to some of the accomplishments of the emergency program. They were able to revise their emergency plans, do tabletop exercises for emergency, multiple disaster exercises and drills, including tabletop exercises with council, administrators. field distribution of supplies at CPOD, and formalization of the MOU and emergency feeding programs. They coordinated 566 volunteers who served over 3,000 hours, expanded the Renton Emergency Preparedness Academy class, an increased number of presentations to the community. This is their video of their pet preparedness. Some of the priorities for 2019 and 20 is to revise the hazard mitigation plan, facilitation of 2 disaster exercises, a full implementation of the virtual system for information sharing and coordination during an emergency, development of a coordinated social media strategy for emergency, and a transition for a just-in-time training model for emergency duties. In terms of the budget proposals for the executive department, $46,000 a year contract funding for consultant for the intergovernmental relations advocacy for City of Renton interests with state legislators, agencies, and for support for grants and other funding sources.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Perez.
is this 46,000 contract, is this number on top of the 120 currently?
This number, last year when we had the request, it was for only from May till the end of the year. So this is for the full funding for the 2019-20, because the contract started only half the year. So this is for the complete funding cycle.
Okay, so it will be total 166?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Then we have some additional costs that have for increased memberships, satellite phones, some additional costs for the inclusion program for $9,800 for the executive program, for the executive department.
I'm sorry, Preeti, can you, what is the inclusion program?
Inclusion program includes costs related to the consultant for Benita Horn, some additional costs for some of our forums and, like the Unity Forum, and some, costs that are related when we have public meetings. So there's a multitude of some extra expenses that are incurred when we're out there with the community. So it's a range of, little costs that have come up over the years as we've been expanding our efforts to be out in the community.
Okay, thank you.
And then $18,000 a year for organizational development costs, such as for the Lean Belting Program, Leadership Academy, Project Management Program, and mental wellness and other offerings. These are costs that are related to, we are moving the efforts of Christy Rowland and performance management and organizational development. We're shifting these over from ASD to the executive department. So there are some costs related to that that we're hoping that can be shifted and added to the executive department. That concludes the executive department's portion of my presentation.
Any questions from council?
Yes.
Sir?
Go ahead.
Caroline, go ahead.
It'll be longer.
Go ahead.
Okay. On page 3-16, under the goals, we talk about continuing to enhance and improve our new website. Is it safe to assume that that is budgeted under other services and charges on 3-17?
Yes.
Or that would be budgeted? Okay, so for the ongoing cost of maintaining and improving the website, do we know roughly what we're looking at there? And also, my second question is, when you look at that line for other services and charges, there's a huge drop between 2018 and 2019. Was that the website, or are there other reasons why that's a $300,000 savings there?
So the website, there are ongoing changes and costs of the website that is already part of our current payment to the website. Plus, we will get a whole new redesign of the website as part of our original contract with them. So they will give us a whole new website, but that will be part of, I believe that's going to be 2022.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that was part of when we negotiated with them.
So for other services and charges, though, we've been trending between 500 and 600,000, right? And now we're coming down to 335 in 2019 and even lower, well, roughly the same for 2020. So where are we saving that money, if not the website?
Let me,
I just want to make sure we're not underestimating.
And I also want to remind you guys that if you don't have the answers, you're always able to email the council the information.
It's a negative 43% change.
I will check and reconfirm that, but my estimation here was the one-time charge we had when we got the new website together, and so it's not an ongoing fee that we need to pay, but I will reconfirm that and get back to you.
Okay,
So-
thank you. I just wondered if there's anything else.
Just a reminder to all department heads, if you don't have the answers tonight, you can email the council with that information. That's been practiced in past budget cycles. Mr. Person?
Well, I just want to do a follow-up question on the website.
Okay.
Say we're going to get a new website again, and we just got one now?
So our initial contract with this, the website provider was that after 5 years, they will do a whole new website for us at no cost.
Okay.
So yeah, without the investment, only with the change of the design and template, because they realize that these technologies change so frequently that was part of our negotiation with them when we selected this vendor.
Please,
I have a
continue.
series of questions, so if anybody else wants to go first, go ahead.
Are there any other questions before I allow Mr. Person to continue? Please.
What is the lean belting program? This is the first I've heard of it.
So last year you funded essentially Christy Rolland, who's our organizational development specialist. And so that includes a whole variety of things. City's high performance, part of the rent and results program, the high performance organization model that we've been implementing, along with lean, which is kind of the engineering side of looking at how you make continuous improvement in city operations. And so that individual, I think she's with us tonight too. There you are. You can talk about it. Yes. She can talk a little bit more about it in detail, but essentially what we did last year was fund that position full time because she had maybe a leg in, and she was also a finance, worked in the finance department as well. And so last year was the first time we got that staffing fully incorporated into the budget. This year, we're going to be able to have some additional resources to start to implement some of the concepts and ideas beyond just having the position in the budget.
Good.
Draw your attention to page 3-10. And it says in the mayor's office, there's a $255,736,000 increase from 2018 to 2019, and what's that for?
So could you identify the page number for us real quickly?
It's 3-10. It was $2,046,962 in, it's the top line in 2018. And the proposal is $2,302,698 in 2019. And if my addition is correct, or subtraction is correct, that's $255,736 increase.
We'll have to get back to you on that
Okey-doke.
specific.
And let's see. I'll skip that one. I have a few things marked here. And this is emergency management, page 3-19. And it's other services and charges of, well, it's 40,000. It went from 10,000 to 40,000 in 2019.
Wow, 279.5.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess my question would be, do you want us to individually answer all these questions this evening? Because I want to make sure you got time to hear from the other two departments, or do
Why
you
don't
want
you
us to
guys
collect them?
collect
And
them?
then get an answer from
I
Yes,
want to
please.
collect them, but I want to be sure that the public is, whether we put them online somewheres, and so the public, I mean, the public is
Yeah, I
watching
agree.
this.
I agree. No.
And I'm sure that they're going to want to know the answers to these questions too.
Sure.
And I think we can find some time to make sure that we,
And then the other one is the next line down is interfund payments. What is it? It goes from 126 to 154 to 214. Is that, what are the interfund payments?
We're collecting your questions.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
You wouldn't know that I spent 7 hours on Sunday on this, on these, and I have about that many more hours for next week.
the
And you-
city attorney.
Page 322.
That's the city attorney.
That's the next section, we haven't done that.
Oh, that's the next, that's the city attorney, but that's part of the executive, isn't it?
No.
No,
No.
that's his own department.
Okay. That's it for the executive.
Any other questions for the executive department? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I invite Chip Vincent, who will be talking about CED,
CED.
Community and Economic Development.
Thank you. Chip?
Oh, look at that.
Good evening, Council President Prince, council members, Chip Vincent, Administrator for the Department of Community and Economic Development. And first, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present the department request to the council for the 2019-2020 budget. I will tell you in advance, I apologize, there's no animated bunnies in my presentation, and I apologize for that.
You didn't try hard enough, Chip. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The mission of community and economic development is to enhance the vitality, livability of the Renton community by promoting a prosperous economy, quality neighborhoods through economic development, sound urban planning, and streamlined land use regulation. For us in CED, the 58 and a half employees we have in the department, this is our North Star. This is what really guides us in all the work that we do within the department. In order to achieve that mission, the department's organized into 4 different divisions, beginning with, on the left side there, Development Services, and Craig Burnell, Craig, stand up, heads up our Development Services division. Next is Jennifer Henning, our Planning Director, who heads up the Planning Division. Jennifer, thank you. Economic Development, headed up by Cliff Long, our Economic Development Director. Thanks, Cliff. And then finally, Long Range Planning, Angie Mathias, our Long Range Planning Manager as well. Thank you, Angie. And yeah, I know she's back there. In addition, we have the responsibility to support the 4 different commissions and boards for the City Planning Commission, City Center Planning Board, Municipal Arts Commission, and Benson Hill Community Planning Board, and I'll talk more about those later. When you think of those 4 different distinct divisions, including the administration, I've put a little narrative here to really define what is the core of which each of those work groups provide for. And for the administration, for myself, it's to provide the overall support for the divisions and the direction to achieve the departmental mission, as well as, and importantly, interdepartmental coordination. What we do in CED is really we're effective communicators. We work with other departments. We cannot do anything without the help and support of the other departments in the city, and that's really a lot of the responsibility that falls on me heading up the department. For the economic development group, Cliff's group, it can be simplified to simply focus on business recruitment and retention. For long-range planning, Angie's group, policy and plan development and code amendments. For Jennifer's group, the Planning Division, Land Use Entitlement, Regulatory Information, and Data Distribution. For Development Services, Craig's group, review and inspection of building permits, code enforcement, development rules, and then finally, again, the staffing and support for the different boards and commissions that we have in the city. As Preeti indicated in her previous budget presentation, for CED, we have an approximately $10 million budget. And you can see how it's organized in these different city service areas, and I'll speak a little bit more to this, as well as similar to the exec's office, we have performance measures that we go through, and I'm going to get into some of these in a little bit more detail, the point of which is that we continue to monitor our effectiveness in achieving what our mission is of our department, beginning with the administration. And when I boil down to the core of what I do is really to maximize the employee morale and efficiency in the Department of Community and Economic Development. And this comes in a couple different forms. First is I provided an example of a one-page narrative that was actually created by the department staff. I did not touch a word or a comma on this document, and it's really talking about underneath our departmental mission, what do we want our workplace culture to be in CED? And we talk about issues such as integrity, honesty, and professionalism, reliability, initiative, customer service, promoting open communication, handling conflict appropriately, and mutual respect, just for some of the categories. And then we have different responsibilities for the management within the organization as well. I can say for myself, heading up CED, I don't think in fact I know, there's not a department that has the broad array of different professional disciplines within it. When you consider that we have surveyors and planners and engineers and plan reviewers and building inspectors and public works inspectors and permit techs and code enforcement staff, just to name most of them, but not all of them. Part of my job and responsibility is to keep everybody aligned, all these different professions working together collaboratively. Because the interesting thing is there's a natural tension between some of those different professions. And the great thing about having a department like CED is we have the opportunity to harmonize those together in one department. And it works really well, as you will see here from some of the data that I provide you here in a minute. In the budget, we have a lot of narrative there, so I picked out a few of the highlights of what has been accomplished in the last 2 years from 2017 and 2018 that we're really proud of, but there's a lot more in the budget, as well as with the expectation and the hope that you approve our budget moving forward, some of the strategies and initiatives we would like to move forward with in the department. So beginning with the accomplishments in the Economic Development Group, CLIFS Group, we have first the council adoption of the multiple award-winning Civic Core Vision and Action Plan. We have the production of 3 new state-of-the-art websites, one for downtown, one for visitors coming to the community, and one for economic development within the city. And then we have a number of examples of, in 2017 and 2018, of the new facade improvement program where we use our community development block grants. The Vigor Fitness as well as the Cortona building are examples of that. For the Economic Development Group, we have a lot going on, but I highlighted what I think the 3 biggest priorities are, or initiatives moving forward over the next 2-year budget cycle. First and foremost is to oversee the redevelopment of the 200 Mill property as a downtown catalyst for new development coming into the downtown. Second, to implement the Civic Core and Action Plan. We spent a lot of time and work on that, and we're continuing our efforts to make that plan a reality. And then finally, to continue the ongoing work for the Sunset Area transformation, to work with our partners in the Sunset Area to see that Sunset investment strategy realized. For the Long Range Planning Group, speaking of accomplishments, I'm sorry, I gotta dwell on this for just a minute because it's one thing for us to say we're the best city and the best community and economic development department in the county and the state of Washington, but it's another thing for outside organizations like the governor's office to recognize us as such. And the Long Range Planning Group wrote 2 applications recognizing the work that we've done as a city. In 2017 for the Rent Municipal Arts Commission Galvanizing Arts Program for downtown, and in 2018 for the Sartori Elementary School project. These were the 6th and 7th Governor Smart Community Awards that we received in a row, and it's just great recognition of the great work and accomplishments going on within the greater Renton community. Additionally, in Long Range, we adopted the Downtown Streetscape Guidelines, as well as adopted the city's first landmark preservation ordinance to ensure significant properties are preserved and provide an economic incentive for property owners and developers to work to restore and enhance older properties in our downtown core. Moving on to the highlights of the initiatives and goals for the next 2 years is, first, is to continue to provide the staffing support for the Planning Commission, the City Center Planning Board, Benson Hill, and Renton Municipal Arts Program. To continue, again, to implement the Sunset Investment Strategy, working with all of our partners and other departments within the city to achieve that. And then finally, to undertake and refine code amendments and plan updates to further refine our development rules so they're clear for us and the community to understand. So moving over now into the planning division, our current planning group that's headed up by Vanessa Dolby. Vanessa, you can stand up and say hi if you want. Vanessa is our current planning manager. Incredible amount of work in the last couple of years. They have conducted 217 pre-application meetings, staffed 30 land use public hearings, and processed 260 land use applications within established timelines back to our Renton results performance measures. They've continued to provide excellent customer service at the Planning Center, We are averaging, and I've got a graphic in a second that'll represent this, 463 customers per month just asking inquiries about what the planning rules are for development in the city. And then one of the biggest achievements in the last couple of years is Vanessa's group, working with our property and technical services and our IT department, has improved transparency by providing an online portal where development proposals can be viewed by customers looking at their computers, smartphones, or tablets. This is a huge innovation. You used to actually have to come into the department to check out a file to find out what was being proposed on a piece of property. Now you can actually simply just go and look it up online. And we've got a graphic that speaks to that in just a second here. Our three primary goals moving forward for the next budget cycle is to continue to engage the community in large-scale development projects, to continue to provide excellent customer service, both for internal as well as external customers, and provide high-quality development to ensure that we reduce the impacts to the community, ensure the new development adds value, quality, and character to the city. And this is something I'm going to provide a little bit more examples of which later on in the presentation. I was talking to you about the amount of inquiries for information coming into our permit center for planning-related questions. This is a cumulative graph, but the one thing I wanted to show you, and this is what's really important for looking at how we can effectively use technology as a savings, you can see at the same time down here, the green line on the very bottom is emails. As this has started to trend up, that more people are getting their information and their questions asked by electronically, you can see the phone calls have dropped down almost at the same rate. So, continuing to be able to be efficient and effective using our staff resources and really empower our residents to get the information they need, not necessarily by coming to our permit center lobby, but getting the information that's available online. We also track the number of Type 2 and Type 3 land use applications, either land use applications that are administrative or require a public hearing. We're averaging about 7 a month, you can see here from this graphic. Also, a lot of work. Jason spent some time about a couple months ago talking about public records. We're probably us and police, we're probably the two departments that get the largest number of public records requests. And we continue to monitor how many requests and how much time goes into those requests. You can see here we're averaging about 10 requests per month, and it's taking about, on average, a little over 15 hours to respond to those requests. Additionally, we have a lot of public hearings. I shouldn't say a lot. The graph makes it look like there's a lot. There really isn't that many, though. We continue to average about 2 public hearings a month with this graphic here. So that's it for the planning division. And for our development engineering division in the planning group, Brianne Vanworth, Bree, say hi. Bree is our development engineering manager, and for Bree, they have a significant amount of accomplishments, and these are just a few of the highlights from your budget book. They completed a total of 2,072 public works permits that were issued with approximately an assessed value of $33 million. We've got a great graphic to speak to that. We have streamlined the franchise permitting process, ensuring timely and consistent reviews, as well as ensured timely and thorough inspections of all public works and private development projects within the city. The current initiatives and goals are to meet and exceed our departmental goals for timely review of public works and construction permits, and to ensure timely and thorough inspections of all public works and private development projects. For the development engineering group, and again, this is cumulative, you can see the significant increase in the amount of requests coming in for customer service. And this is requests for information, again, out in our permit center of the department. We have the number of issued permits in development engineering based on permit type whether it's streets, franchise utilities, stormwater, sanitary sewer, or domestic water. You can see this is where the 2,072 I spoke to a minute ago, this is how it's broken out by the different utilities within the city. This graphic is really interesting to me when you look at the total valuation of all of those development engineering permits. It's almost $33 million of investment in the Renton community with all of those assets. And this pie chart really is interesting because these are just the city-owned assets that are coming back. And you can see we have 10 million, or about 1/3 of that 33 million, 10 million coming back to the city as capital assets. And you can see the breakout in the pie chart with streets being the big winner there with a little over $3 million, and new public roads that are generated by private developers for new projects coming into the city. Moving on to our last work group within the planning division is property and technical services, and Amanda Askren is our property and technical services manager. They have updated the city's addressing database in the last 2 years, and you never would know it, but behind the scenes, they are busily working on getting ready for the 2020 census. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes to do that. They've also updated the city's GIS land info and data source. This group really provides the tools we have in the department to be efficient and effective in doing our jobs. And updating the GIS system and keeping it current is one example of that. Their current initiatives and goals are to continue to provide mapping support for the customers as well as the departments within the city, and provide project management and technical support for electronic plan submittal. This is a graphic of the electronic plan submittal program that Amanda and her group have put together working with the department. If you look up here in the beige area, you can see this is our first phase, and this is frankly converting our old paper files over into Laserfiche so they can be accessed. The next phase is taking all that information and actually creating what's called a CSS software system, a customer self-service portal, that we can begin to get our system set up so it can be accessed from a web portal from the outside the city. Currently today, you have to come in with a key fob, and be able to submit your application that way. The Subtronic, that's actually a unique name that we created. It's our final actual conversion to customers being able to be able to submit an application over the internet. Today, we're in between where they're coming in and they're providing it electronically, but it's a handoff. They do it at our front counter. The blue box, the Subtronic, actually takes us there. And then the green areas are the continuation of the update of our system. For building permit review in an inspection division, this is headed up by Craig Burnell, who's behind me, and incredible amount of work in this group. On the last 2 years, they have issued almost 12,000 permits with a total assessed valuation of $1,770,000,000. That's from October 1st, 2016 to September 30th, 2018.
Hey, Chip,
Yeah.
how would that number compare to last biennium?
It is, I would have to go back and look. I know we looked at the same period. It's a little bit down from the last period, and I don't remember exactly how much, but I can tell you.
Okay.
For the 2016 2015 budget, we actually had some pretty big projects that actually hadn't been built, but they had pulled their permits, like the Southport Hyatt Regency as an example, the Group Health, and now Kaiser Permanente. A lot of them had pulled their permits, and you see this information come up when the permits are pulled, but the projects aren't built. And this is a dip down from what it was from 2015 and 2016, but I don't remember exactly how much.
Okay, thank you.
And for accomplishments in the building group, they have, in development services, completed 24 single-family and 40 commercial building permit applications. Each month, continuing to see this growth. And this was interesting to note for me is when I came to Renton in 2008, we were doing more single family than commercial, and that's flipped since we've come out of the recession, that now we do actually more commercial than we do single family. And it's really a structural change that's going on within the economy of the city of Renton. The weekly inspections, this is something that we look at every week, is the number of inspections. You can see here, we actually have this broken out by inspector if you got out down in detail, but you can see this is an amazing number. We're averaging 373 building inspections a week between 6 building inspectors and 14,000 plus year to date. And I'll get back to this in terms of the budget ask in just a few minutes here. With respect to code compliance in the Development Services Division, this group continues to do an amazing job responding to inspection requests by private citizens, and all sites are verified by code compliance at least once a year and checked to make sure they haven't relapsed. And so once we close a case, we go back out and make sure that these have continued to stay in the correct situation. So here you have a couple of before and afters of sites that you can see the before over on the left side and the after, and another one. And I just can't tell you the incredible work and it's really a thankless job, and they do it with such grace and commitment. They do a great job. So here we have some metrics in terms of the number of cases that were closed in 2017, averaging very consistently in the city, a little over 1,000 code complaints a year. And here's 2018. You can see while we've made progress on shopping carts significantly, the big ones still are vegetation, garbage, bulky waste, and shopping carts. And then, I just wanted to take, oh goodness sakes, I'm going to try and go quickly here in the essence time. But, we spend a lot of time talking about metrics and doing the quantitative side of it. And for us in CED, all the numbers don't mean anything unless we're creating a built environment that our community's proud of. And so we spend a lot of time measuring, how quickly we turn around permits, how many inspections we do. But really, at the end of the day, it's really about, are these projects adding value, quality, and character to the community? And so we started asking ourselves this question. This is the survey we provided to our Planning Commission this last year. And we asked them to do a survey and to say, look at these projects and grade them for us. And this was one of our Renton Results performance measures. I didn't highlight it, but it was about 70%. So not that high a grade from our Planning Commission, but we picked a random sample of projects throughout the community. And I'll just run through these really quickly. One of my favorite is
Ms. Perez?
Thank you. Hi, Chief.
Yeah, hi, Ruth.
Sorry to interrupt you. But talking about code compliance, in the proposed budget for community and economic development includes 5 new positions. One of the positions is a building inspector. The building inspector is, I can see that you want to already jump and tell me something.
I promise I'm going right there. I was just going to quickly click through just a number of projects that we asked our Planning Commission to survey. And we would like to make this more broad in future years and getting community feedback on the project. So ATS automation, and again, this is just a cross-section. Just tried to pick a good cross-section. CarMax, Cedar River Station, the Child School, Dutch Brothers Coffee, the Hampton Inn and Suites, IKEA, Kaiser Permanente, Maplewood Park Apartments, Mary Ryan Bed and Breakfast downtown, Meadowcrest Early Childhood Learning Center, a gas station remodel, My Dental Clinic down on Park, the Renton Academy, RTC's new automotive complex, the Lofts at 2nd and Main, the Hyatt Regency, and the Talbot Townhomes. Vigor Fitness, I spoke to earlier, Enclave Residential Subdivision, that's up there. So those are just a handful of samples of, trying to get at getting a sense of whether or not these are projects the community feels good about. Now, to Councilmember Perez's question, with respect to the budget request that's in front of you. First is with fees, the staff have reviewed land use, building, and development engineering fees and basically looked at them against the cost of construction index, the CCI, and adjusted them accordingly for inflation. We've also we have a sample of peer jurisdictions based on geographic proximity and size that we look at in terms of setting our fees. We shoot to be just right about in the average of those communities. So we've made adjustments to those in the fee schedule as well. We're making a policy change. We're recommending to the council that we collect 50% of our building permit fees upfront at the time of building permit application. This is nothing we've done in the past, but we have a lot of issues with people applying for building permits, and frankly, they can sit there for a long time before they're picked up. In fact, sometimes they may not be picked up. We just went through an exercise in CED of culling out permits that had been applied for. We'd spent significant time and resources, but were never compensated for them other than just the plan check fees. So we want to move half of the collection of building permit fees up to the time of collection.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Corman.
Can I ask a question on that point? Would those, or would part of it be refunded if the application is rejected, or how does that work?
Well, what we would do is we would only, in fact, we deal with this sometimes, if somebody pulls their building permit application, we would only charge them for the time and materials expended so far.
Okay, right. So they wouldn't be billed 50%, they'd be billed for what it costs the city to get that far with it to the point when they decide it wasn't viable or something.
Yeah, well, typically, it's very, it's challenging for us because there's so much work that goes into the building plan review. We expend significant resources to get up to that point, but all the applicant has done at that point is pay for what's called a plan check fee, and it's very nominal.
Okay.
And our finance department, Misty Baker sitting behind me, and if she actually went through an exercise where there's just these old permit applications that people never pulled. So the goal here in this is that if you're going to apply for a building permit, we're hopeful that it's not speculative. You know, if you're going to take that step, and having some skin in the game in terms of 50% of the fees up front, we think is significant movement in that direction. And cost recovery as well.
Mr. Person.
I think if I understand what you're saying right, is a lot of these permits come in and we actually send the permit out to a structural engineer where we have to pay to have a structural engineer, because it's cheaper and more economical for us to send that out than have that person on staff, because you don't know how often you do. So we're spending that money, and I think we had one close that the permit fee was like $300,000, and it sat for a couple years, and they never came in and picked it up, but we had spent all that money. So, see, I'm most likely of the opinion they should be paying 100%, but, you know, I like to get the money in, but realistically, if you're gonna come in and have us go through all that work, and even if it's, a lot of it's done by just staff, but that takes several hours, and that is not a cheap, that's not a cheap date for the city, so.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree. I mean, I think that's the example that I've been able to see over the years.
Mr. President?
Mr. Corman.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I understand the point in recovering the costs. And I guess the question about just the basic viability could be handled in like a pre-development conference or something, right? So somebody wouldn't come in and think they were going to be able to build a single-family house and pay for the whole cost of the permit, only to find us go, no, the lot's too small, or you don't have enough setback, and then that's the only thing I was concerned about.
Yeah, and let me share, there's nothing magic about the number of 50%. We were just, and if you have any recommendation, we just wanted, it was twofold, to do better cost recovery for the work that we're putting in up front, and number two, being able to separate these applications to make sure they're real if we're going to put our time and effort into them.
Very good.
I think you named it right when you said skin in the game.
Good.
And so a red line version of these fee increases will be forthcoming. Now, I'm going to conclude with Council Member Perez's question. And let me just walk through some of the requests for the 2019-2020 budget. First is we have two positions we're asking the council to consider converting. The first is we have back to that building permit inspection chart, averaging almost 370 building inspections a week. We have 6 building inspectors. One of those building inspectors is a limited term position, not a full-time position. Mike Trimberger has been with the city for 3 years. We've invested significant resources and training. Model and play, couldn't ask for a better building inspector. We would like to convert his position as a limited term to a full-time position, because under limited term rules, we can only keep them for 3 years. And so that's what this is. Another second position for conversion is we have a vacant permit tech position. We would like to convert that to a permit center supervisor position. Right now, we have a lead for our permit center. It's challenging for a lead because they don't have the authority to do performance evaluations and reviews, and we feel like in discussions among the managers and myself, we really need somebody who is overall responsible point of contact for the operations of our permit center and not more than just a lead. So that's that request. With respect to new positions, the first one is an economic development specialist. This will be focused on a lot of the work going on downtown with respect to implementation of the Civic Core Plan, as well as continuing the work of the Arts Commission, as well as business recruitment and retention work within the city, but really focused on a number of our downtown efforts.
Yep, Mr. Pavoni has a question.
So is that the same position that was held by John Collum?
No, this is actually a new position.
So is that one filled then?
So we have extended an offer, and Cliff, when is David?
November 19th.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have planning on a new staff joining us, and for John's position, this is a new position.
But wasn't that John's position that you just?
No, this is actually going to be really focused. We're looking at this about 50% of the time, actually be dedicated to being the coordinator for the Arts Commission, as well as working on the Civic Core Plan implementation. John's position was working more with the businesses downtown, working with the Downtown Renton Partnership, and a number of other programs. For downtown, we could use another body, and this is an important position for us to be able to advance primarily civic core and arts and culture.
Okay.
Mr. Person.
Follow up on that. Don't we already have somebody working with the Art Commission?
No.
No?
The person that we had hired on a contract basis to be the liaison to the Arts Commission was Elizabeth Higgins. She just retired in the last couple months. Elizabeth retired at the end of the year, and we tried to get her all the way through this year. And right now, what we're doing on a limited infill basis is Jesse Kotarski is taking over Elizabeth's role as being the liaison to the Arts Commission. And in all candor, we're hoping that Jesse, it's a public process to fill the economic development specialist position, but we're hoping that Jesse will apply and be successful going through that recruitment.
You follow up?
Go ahead.
I guess maybe, and you can send it to us later, but I need a better justification why we need a half-time employee to work with the Art Commission. I mean, I don't see that much. Maybe I don't, and it's most likely because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
So if you get us some information to justify why we need a half-time position to work with the Art Commission.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say you all had a committee of the whole meeting with the Arts Commission. Their request was for a full-time arts coordinator, so we've actually scaled this back in a way that makes it more reasonable and realistic with the body of work that we're asking this person to do, part of it being the Arts Commission, but we'll be glad to provide that to you, Don.
Okay.
The other new position is for the Development Engineering Inspector. This is a fee-supported position based on raising fees specifically for our franchise utilities. We've seen an incredible increase in the amount of franchise utility work that we're doing within the city, and this new Development Engineering Inspector will cover that. I'm going to jump down to Arts and Culture Operations, since we were talking about that a second ago. In this budget is a request to add an additional $50,000 to the Arts Commission budget. Right now, today, they receive almost $53,000 from the general fund. Their request to the mayor and to the council is to commit to the arts $1 per resident in the city, and the additional $50,000 gets them to $103,000 total. And again, backs up to once we have that in addition to the 1% for the arts and the grant work we do, it really creates that need for staffing to be able to support that kind of a budget for the Arts Commission.
Hey, Chip, what were we giving the Arts Commission prior to the $50,000?
$2,900 a year.
Thank you.
Yeah, pretty low.
No, I can't say enough about the Arts Commission.
Yeah,
They're just an
no.
incredible group. And then I want to conclude with under fee-supported programs, the Safe and Healthy Housing Initiative and registration program. This is an awkward one because as we're putting together the budget, we have to include everything that's being considered that has a budgetary impact, but at the same time, the council has not adopted the healthy housing program for the city. So what you see reflected here in the budget request from the department is based on the conversations that we've had at 2 committee of the whole meetings this year, as well as our recent Planning and Development Committee where we reviewed the proposal. Where the Safe and Healthy Housing program is going next is at our Planning and Development Committee this next Thursday. We will be sending out a briefing memo to the entire council outlining everything that's in the program and how we respond to your questions the last time we got together at the Committee of the Whole. Let me just simply say a few things about the program. The first issue we heard is that there was a disparity between the revenues that were received by the city and the resources going into it. We've married those up. This only requires a business license, nothing more, nothing else. Just a simple business license if you're a landlord. That's $150 a month. We've been able to scale the staffing so that there's 2 positions in CED, code inspector, as well as a housing ombudsman or a planner to work with the tenants and with the landlords. And then finally, you'll see in another budget for the finance department, there's an accounting assistant 3 to continue to work on the business license side of it. But we've pared this program back to be something that doesn't require upfront inspections by the city, but rather requires self-certification by the landlords at the time of business license application. And we think we can do this with only 3 staff and overall 2 in CED. And that's assuming a 60% compliance rate. The key part of this program is only one of these positions is going to be coming in the first year of 2019, because the first year is just going to be outreach to the landlords and to the tenants. That's one of the lessons we learned talking to other communities, is you just really need to take the time to do the outreach and do the education and training for that. So with that, here is all the great staff, and I will just say, as I can't imagine a better group of professionals that I get to come to work with every day. I mean, this is just such a great department, and I'm so proud to be part of the CED team. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions, and I have my help behind me in case I can't.
Caroline, go ahead.
Okay,
Oh, hold on, Caroline, go ahead.
Carol, go
We'll
ahead.
get the short ones out of the way first. So on page 3-51, under planning, it looks like supplies are going up 628%. So if that's not something you know about offhand, we can look at that later.
Could you say, I'm sorry, which page again?
3-51.
Yeah.
what we did with the CED budget this year is rather than bringing forward a lot of new requests, we took a step back and looked at the last 3 years of what they were actually spending and where they were spending it. And we shifted a bunch of stuff around rather than bringing forward new program requests. So we looked and said, if we have an area over here in planning where they're really not spending all of their budget, let's take $10,000 from here and move it over here where it was needed, rather than bringing forward those new program requests.
Okay, but it doesn't tell, so supplies, is that like office supplies or paper? I mean,
It would be anything tangible that they were buying, so it would be either be supplies or small tools and minor equipment.
so from $7,700 to $56,000, that's coming from other departments?
It's all coming from other departments and other lines. So we can dig in and see what the
I just was
managers
curious,
put
that was
in
such a
there.
high increase of 628%.
Ms. Press.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
I
No, that's no problem.
So hopefully this time I can be more specific about my question. If you go to page 115, there are
I'm sorry,
five
I'm sorry, 1-15?
1-15.
Thank you.
The proposed budget it includes 5 new positions. 2 of these new positions, building inspectors, 2 building inspectors. You already explained us that you currently have 6 of them, and but one of these positions is gonna be because one of these person is gonna be hired full time. The other building inspection, it's what you just explained to us. So in total, we will have 7
Yes.
inspectors.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Then on page 3-51, okay. In overtime, you have for 2018, 6,395, and in 2019, 9,030. What is driving the overtime increase?
You know, for us, most of the other overtime is related to our development engineering inspection group. That may seem like a large amount. It's really for that group. So many of the engineering inspections, because of the time of day of the week that a lot of these projects are done, they're done on weekends. And so we actually pay overtime for our inspectors to come in and perform those. A lot of times we'll hire special inspectors as well to cover those, but with these large projects that have transportation impacts, we actually push the developers, if possible, to do that work on weekends, and that's a lot of what that overtime's covering.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on, just to follow up on that?
Thank you, Randy.
If a contractor wants to work on the weekends or nights or whatever and wants the overtime, don't we bill them for the overtime?
Yes, we do.
So we're getting the money back.
Gosh, thank you for that follow-up question. No, this is, while there's an increase, it's a zero-sum game for us because we bill for all of those hours. Thank you for pointing
Mr.
that
Cornell?
out.
Yeah, and that was actually a good segue into kind of where I was going to go is, of course, this doesn't have the revenue picture, but this is a department that often really pays its own way with fees, I think, that you collect for this. And one outcome that I would like to try and help your department achieve is to, and you have it listed here in your goals, is a timely review of these applications. And so I commend you for asking for the additional personnel. And I think, as I think about what you said earlier about not wanting to really waste time with permits where you're going to do the whole review and then the permit never gets picked up either, because there are a lot of builders out there that where time is of the essence. They've got a lot of capital tied up, and they would like those reviews to happen quickly. And I think that, you know, sometimes probably what we're talking about here is kind of chump change compared to the types of financial levers that you have when you have a big project that needs to get moving or they hit the seasonal window or whatever. Yeah. So So I mean, I guess I would just hope that this is enough staff to keep things going with the way the economy seems to be on fire around here, so.
You know, I'm going to knock on wood and say yes. The biggest challenge for me in the career I've chosen is that for planning and community and economic development departments, we're a leading economic indicator of what's going on in the economy. And there's really not a lot for us to really judge that's going on out in front of us on how to right-size our respective organizations. The reason I say it's a challenge in my career, every decade there's been one of these and one of these in my career. And you just, gosh, if we could just level that out, I would.
Yeah.
It's been and frankly, both are hard. And I will tell you, for me and working with the mayor and Bob, we're pretty conservative in right-sizing this, understanding the employee issues and the commitment you're making to staff. And,
Right.
you know, we really try to be creative and right-size the organization. It's a balancing act, though.
So that when we get the downturn, we don't have to lay people off.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that too, so good. Okay.
Any other questions for CED?
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr. Person.
I guess, first of all, I have to express my concern that somebody put you in an awkward position of asking for two positions that the council hasn't voted on yet. And I'm not against the program. I'm very concerned about it because at the committee, committee of the whole, we expressed a whole lot of concerns, and it was referred to committee, and then it was going to come back to committee of the whole so we could again take a look at it. And that's my understanding and recollection, because you know, my concern is I thought we were talking about like a $50 permit fee for business license for single
I
family.
know what you're talking about,
And now you're saying it's $150. Well, here's my concern. And there's a lot of people that have rentals that are trying to hold their rent down and to their tenants,
They're gonna have to pass
and $150 a year increase. And then you're going to add on, if we're going to do councilmatic bonds, that's going to get passed on to just the people we're trying to help. I'm really, really concerned about that, and I just want to be sure that as this topic comes up, we have plenty of time to discuss it. And I mean, I agree we have to do something. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking against it. I'm concerned that, and I'll use I have a renter who, I know I could rent this house for several $100s more a month than what I'm getting for it. He can't afford anymore. I can't afford to keep eating all these increases. And I don't think I'm not going to let that stop me from doing the right thing, but I'm not the only person out there that's doing this, so I'm really concerned how we address that, and that we have adequate time to talk about it before we just pass a budget, and then all of a sudden, now we passed another fee on to people who can't afford it, because that's, we're going to pass it on. You gotta, at some point, you just gotta pass that on. And
Mr. President.
Real quick, Don.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say something, then I was gonna.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I agree. I myself and Chip will admit to this, have been bugging him about when Safe and Healthy Housing was gonna come back. There's almost not a time that we speak that I don't ask him about that. So I think we'll get there, and I think it's on the docket for pretty soon.
It's actually, we had a briefing at the last Planning and Development Committee. It's coming back to P&D this Thursday. And the path forward, based on the conversation we had at Planning and Development Committee, is that we would do a committee report as well as a briefing memo to the entire council to respond to the last remaining questions and how we respond to that in the proposal moving forward.
Yeah, and appreciate this conversation too, just to make sure we're all in agreement. But Yeah, so when I was just talking about it, I was glad you're growing your staff. I was specifically talking about you've got a new inspector that you're proposing, which would be a building inspector, if I understood correctly. And then you want to fill the position with the supervisor for permitting.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, different than the personnel that we're talking about that would oversee the healthy housing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I agree with Mr. Person's memory that I think we hadn't quite, resolved what that program was yet.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm glad that you're being proactive about including the proposed money or whatever in the budget, but we still want to agree on what that proposal really is.
Are there any other questions for CED?
Yeah.
I have a comment.
Ms. Press?
And I should have started with this, Chip. I really, really enjoyed your presentation. I really appreciate all the effort all your team always put on this, but I highly appreciate the photo at the end. Putting faces behind all this work and seeing the full department there, it talks a lot about the good work that all of you are doing, and especially the great motivational how do you say this, staff, how you motivate the staff and your leadership. I highly appreciate it. It feels good, and thank you very much for taking the time to do all of that.
Well, thank you for that.
One of them could have been holding a bunny rabbit, though.
Next budget.
I just have two questions. First of all, on your goals for next year, one of them is implement wayfinding plan. And the wayfinding plan that I remember was developed a whole lot of years ago. And as it was being implemented, people are saying, whoa, who's putting up those ugly signs? I can't even see them. So I hope there's a new wayfinding plan that's going to be coming to the council, because the old one was going to be very, very expensive. Our sign shop couldn't replace a sign if it got knocked down. It'd have to go out to a specialty shop, which would drive our cost of signs up a lot. So that's just a concern, and hopefully we're going to see something other than the old one.
Yeah, just two things super quickly. First is, I agree about the ugly old signs. Second is, this is part of the Civic Court implementation. You all adopted some design standards for wayfinding as part of the Civic Court plan.
Okay, I just hope our sound shop can.
Oh, and we worked with them. Yeah, absolutely.
And then secondly, at our last retreat at the start of the year, a couple of the important things that we brought up was the Airbnb, some regulations on those, and I don't see that as one of your goals going forward.
And you won't see it as a goal going forward, only in that actually it's going finally to Planning and Development Committee this Thursday. It's been through Planning Commission. We've done a briefing with Planning and Development, and we'll have it completed by the first of the year, Don.
Okay, and then the other thing that the council brought up at the retreat was the parking on the streets and for apartments, and maybe that's already going in, but I mean, if you look around the city, and one of the complaints that we get, or at least I get, is parking. I mean, the people are parking, and I'll give the Main Street apartments, and nobody's doing anything wrong, they're not, but it's just the way it does. You see all the street parking is filling up with the people who don't want to pay for the parking garage.
Yeah.
Which is great, but that means now we don't have parking for our shoppers. So, I mean, I think this is to me, it's very important.
Yeah. And again, similar to the last item, we've done a significant amount of public outreach, work with the Planning Commission and the Planning and Development Committee, and we'll bringing this issue to conclusion as well.
Okay.
And any other, Ms. Press?
I'm sorry, but he just reminded me about the parking, which I know that, that is also one of my biggest concerns. Councilmember Corman and I, we just received a phone call about that just a week ago. So in page 3/46, one of your goals is utilizing utilize existing incentives to continue to foster a diverse array of increased housing opportunities in Renton. And you also mentioned that you have been working with the other departments. So my question is, are you working really close with transportation about how coordinate with Metro and the new Metro lines and the new transportation, public transportation tools? So again, about decreasing traffic, promoting multimodal transportation. I'm assuming that you are.
The short answer is yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
We're not gonna make it through, Greg.
No.
Get started then.
Next up is Public Works, Greg Zimmerman.
Greg's always good at making up time.
No pressure, they're telling me.
Nope.
Last time.
No, we did. And that's why when they said he was going last, I was like,
But we can extend the time. I mean, he can continue next.
we can continue next week. Yes. I just knew when they said that we might, if we had time for HR, that there was no way we were going to have time for HR.
Okay. Good evening,
Good
President Prince and members of the Renton City Council. I'm Greg Zimmerman, Renton's Public Works Administrator, and I feel privileged to be presenting the Public Works Department two-year biennial budget to you today. The department details on the budget can be found starting on page 3-107. As I go through my presentation, I'll be referring to some of these references for the numbers, so I'll let you know where I am in terms of the draft budget book. Public Works Department organizational chart represents the staff count from the end of 2018. As you see, there's 155 full-time employees in the Public Works Department. We're broken into three divisions: maintenance services, transportation systems, and utility systems. The proposed 2019-2020 department organizational chart is shown on page 3-107, and that chart shows 162 full-time employees. So part of our presentation and part of our recommendation and request for new programs is 7 new FTE employees, which I will go through as we proceed. Similar to the other departments, we have a nice breakdown here on this slide of costs of our activities in several city service areas. The Public Works Department mainly does work in mobility, utilities and environment, and internal services. Our operating budget, as you'll see down here, I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, the proposed operating budget for 2019 will be around $85 million, and the operating budget for 2019 will be around $84 million. The $85 million represents an increase of about $2.5 million over the operating budget of 2018, which is about a 3% increase, and that 3% increase includes the new programs I'll be talking about, including the 7 new FTE employees and some equipment purchases. The total department budget is proposed to be $128 million in 2020 and $122 million in 2020. I'm sorry, $128 million in 2019 and $122 million in 2020. That budget includes the operating budget that I just spoke about and our significantly large capital improvement plan, both in the utilities and in transportation. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well as we go. See pages 3-109. The bottom of the table will go through our budget highlights, which essentially are our, as we call them, new program requests. and I'll talk about those right now. They're listed on this slide. We're asking for an additional 1 FTE traffic maintenance worker. What we're finding is last budget process, we added a transportation engineer in operations to field concerns from the public about questions about signs, stop signs, speeding traffic, that type of thing. And that actually worked. It helped us keep up with the demand in terms of citizen requests for traffic operations. But what happened is it created an imbalance in our signal sign shop because they couldn't keep up with the new work orders, frankly. So what this 1 FTE position would do is provide another worker in the sign shop to be able to keep up with all the new work requests that are coming from the transportation operations section. And help keep up with that particular workload. We'd like to add a 1 FTE wastewater civil engineer. Now, of course, wastewater is an enterprise fund. It doesn't come out of the general fund. And we have 2 wastewater civil engineers now on staff. The workload has risen to a point where we feel like we need a 3rd wastewater engineer. We've got a pretty big capital program, which I'll be talking about, and this would really help in terms of them keeping up with their workload. We're asking for 1 additional full-time employee transportation design engineer. We have 4 engineers in the transportation design group, and it's always a struggle to get our projects out on time and in budget because we have an ever-expanding capital improvement program. As a matter of fact, for the years 2019 and 2020, each of those 2 years we have a $20 million capital improvement program scheduled, which is a very ambitious program, and we feel like we need, in order to deliver that program, we feel like we need an additional transportation design engineer to bring the staff from 4 engineers up to 5. In the maintenance group, we're asking for 2 full-time employees, street maintenance workers, and also some associated equipment. One of our big struggles is, as a matter of fact, one of the most key struggles that I want to key on is we are having trouble preventing a slow decline in our pavement condition index throughout the city. As you may recall, the pavement condition index rates from 0 to 100, with 100 being a perfectly new road and 0 being a terrible road with potholes and undrivable. We try to keep our overall condition index at 70. We've slipped down to 68 because we are having difficulty with our current staffing level to keep up with that particular goal of a 70 overall condition index. So this proposal would add 2 street maintenance workers and some equipment that I'll talk about in a minute, and we think that will help us at least prevent the continual decline of our overall pavement condition index throughout the city. We also would like to request 2 wastewater maintenance service workers. That's, again, from enterprise funds. It's not from the general fund. And that would help us keep up with our wastewater problems, keep ahead of it. When we have a wastewater problem, a lot of times it results in a blockage, which can back up sewage into people's homes or into businesses. And we do a lot of internal TV inspection of our sewer lines now. It's hard to keep up with the whole system, especially overall the aging sewer lines with root intrusion and that type of thing. We have a very small staff in wastewater maintenance, and we think that these 2 extra maintenance service workers would really help us keep ahead of our wastewater maintenance challenges. So that adds up to the 7 FTEs. 3 of them are from enterprise funds, 4 of them are from the general fund. In addition, we'd like to add a utility engineering internship program. That's a fairly inexpensive program that will allow us to, the interns from schools would allow us to help with the utility engineers get their projects out. And it's also a key part of our inclusion program. We would like to look at this internship program as a way to reach out to diverse communities and let them see a little bit what the city of Renton does and the employment opportunities that exist in the city of Renton. So it's one of the factors that not only will it help us get our capital projects done and our programs, but also it will serve to enhance our diversity goals. Then 2 other programs, Laserfish scanning program to get some of our files into the new Laserfish system, and increase sign section supplies budget. This one goes along with the 1 FTE traffic maintenance worker that would go to the sign shop. We ran out of funding in our sign supply budget in August this year because of all the work orders that came through. And this would be about, I think, $30,000 a year to help us keep our inventory up so we don't run out of supplies. So those are the
Greg, real quick.
new programs. Yes.
Mr. Person?
Yeah, maybe I didn't hear you, but in there's to add traffic calming radar speed signs
Yes.
at 50,000 a year.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped that one. You're
Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah,
That's an important one.
that's a very important one. I think that's a very important to the community. We've had a lot of requests for those signs. And I don't think the $50,000 that you're putting in per year is enough. And I'd like to see it raised to 100,000. That's how important I personally feel, and that's what I'm hearing from the community, because they say, why can't I have one of those signs?
Okay, I'll make a note of that. And
No, you didn't expect that.
what's that?
You didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. $50,000 will buy about 8 of those signs, and we'll have 16 new signs for 2 years. So just to give you a perspective on it. And we move those, as you know, we move those signs around to different neighborhoods. They're mobile.
People don't like you to move them after they get them.
I know, I know. We find, though, that the effectiveness declines when people get used to them.
Yeah.
And when you take them away and then put them back, they slow down again. It's interesting. So,
Another good thing that I saw in Ponderay County, thank God I wasn't speeding, but their radar trailers, when it goes over the posted speed limit, it not only flashes, but it turns red lights and blue flashing lights on so you think there's a police officer there. It was very effective.
okay, on this next slide, I'll quickly go through the benefits that these new programs will bring to the department. The service improvements in the utility system division will include increased capital improvement project management capability, and wastewater utility use of interns, as I mentioned, will help that, as well as help us toward our inclusion goals. It will further, then the service improvements in the maintenance services division includes increased sewer system maintenance to be more proactive, resolving problems before they result in sewer backups. And then the additional street maintenance workers will help us keep our street pavement rating up at 70, which is a desired goal. The service improvements in the transportation system will increase the transportation improvement project management capability so we can try to actually process those $20 million worth of capital improvement projects that we have both in 2019 and 2020. And also the additional representative in the signal shop and the additional funding for parts in the signal shop to keep up with really resident demands for speeding and for different traffic problems that they call in. On this page, I've listed the utility rates, but I'm going to get to that later on in the program, so I'm going to skip over it on this slide. I'll get back to it. The Public Works Department continues to have, as a mission statement, Public Works Department manages and maintains Renton's utility and transportation systems in a skillful, professional, and caring manner so as to improve the lives of our residents and business customers. We recognize that what we do, although it's technical and although it's public works, the end result is to improve the lives of our residents, and we try never to lose sight of that fact. Core services, the department develops, builds, and maintains streets and sidewalks, develops and maintains water, wastewater, and surface water utility infrastructures, and coordinates the collection of garbage and operates the airport. In addition to these goals, we also are very interested, and we focus our budget on supporting the priorities of the city's six-year business plan, including supporting the city in providing a safe, healthy, vibrant community, supporting the city's economic development priorities, supporting planned growth and influence the decisions that impact the city, provide support in building an inclusive, informed city with opportunities for all, serve our vulnerable and diverse populations, and enhance customer service and productivity. Like the other departments, we also work on our Renton results performance measures. We have a variety of performance goals within the 42 programs that we deliver, mostly in the mobility and utilities and environment service areas. Key performance measures including maintaining an overall pavement condition rating of 70. That's now, we're looking up at that rather than down at that, so we're trying to get back there. We're at 68 now. And other key performance goals include reducing arterial corridor travel time. Actually, we've measured that we've reduced arterial corridor traffic time -9%. So we've been a little successful in that area. Partly, there's a lot of factors in that, but part of it is because of the transit improvements, more service from Metro, and part of it is because of our intelligent transportation signal systems on roads like Petrovisky and Rainier that are computerized and they're synchronizing with each other, with themselves better. So we're moving a little bit more traffic through our corridors according to these measures. We've increased our annual recycling collection 20%. That's a pretty good performance. Actually exceeds what I thought we were going to achieve. Maintain the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System clean water permit compliance in the city 100%, being 100% compliant with that, and maintaining 20% or greater discount on federal flood insurance rates for our residents and our businesses by maintaining a community rating system classification 5, which we've managed to do. So our residents get a 20% discount from the federal government on flooding insurance. Looking back, I'll go through some of the things that we've accomplished. Utility Systems is ahead of schedule, actually, with the construction of the Renton Hill Utility Infrastructure Improvement Project. I'm told that we're going to finish a year early, which is wonderful news, maybe toward the end of this year or early into 2019. So that's just great. I mean, the faster we get out of there and get the work done, the better. Completed the construction of the utility infrastructure for the Sunset Highlands redevelopment area. A bunch of utilities went in before the Sunset Lane Street near the new library and the new park off of Sunset, so that work was done. Completed design of the Kennydale 320 reservoir, which is the reservoir next to new Fire Station 15. Completed 30% design of the Highlands 435 zone reservoir and 100% design of the off-site water mains. And completed 90% design of the downtown utility infrastructure improvement project. That's the project where we're designing utilities to go in ahead of the downtown city core road conversions that we're doing, converting the one-way streets to two-way streets. Obviously, we have to get the utilities in first. You don't want to tear up your new streets. So that's a significantly expensive project, and we are keeping ahead of it to make sure that those utilities go in first. Also completed the system evaluation for the Kennydale Lakeline sewer system, began design, and we're currently internally cleaning the sewer to make sure there's no backups over the winter. Transportation Systems Division obtained $19 million in grants secured for the projects that are listed here. $9 million of that dollars are for 3 bridges, which we're doing seismic retrofits and painting. The Williams Avenue Bridge, the Bronson Way Bridge, and the Hauser Way Bridge. And then $7 million for Rainier. We've been pretty successful collecting grant money for that. And also some preservation money for overlay of Southwest 43rd Street and overlay of Renton Avenue, and also $1.2 million of Department of Ecology funds for Duval. So it's been a pretty successful year obtaining transportation grants.
Greg, real quick.
Yes.
You've got about 6 minutes, and then we'll have you come back next week.
Okay, that'll be fine. Just real quickly, these are some of the projects that we've successfully built, transportation projects. Sunset Lane, Northeast and Northeast 10th Street, near the library. The Connecting Downtown Project Phase 1, which is South 2nd Street and Main Avenue. That was obviously one of our very visible projects and the first one of our one-way to two-way street conversions downtown.
And
Ms. Press.
just because I saw the photo, thank you for repairing the downtown sign.
Oh,
Just
goodness.
the D went a crook during the weekend.
Yeah.
We just need to fix the D again.
Oh, gosh.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened, you know.
I
One
don't
day it
know.
wasn't fine, but yesterday
know.
the D was falling down.
The bad news is they're hitting our artwork. The good news is they're not hitting our traffic controllers. So, you know, it kind of goes back and forth. You have to look at the bright side.
Mr. Person.
Just a comment, because I bet you there's a whole bunch of people that ask the same question that I finally asked of this, what this little knob is in the picture.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
For signs.
And that is so people won't run up over the curb.
That's right.
With their cars, and it's already saved our one signal pole out there 2 or 3 times.
yeah, this is a raised table, so it doesn't have a drop, a curb drop. Everything, the traffic's at the same level as the sidewalk, so that is the reason for having that, so that you keep cars from going on to the sidewalks.
Just a comment, I was wondered since the first one I saw, and then I finally got smart enough to ask the question.
I thought it was the Liberty Bell at first, but they reminded me that that's what it's for. And then in the Benson Cascade area, Phase 1 of the 116th Avenue Southeast pedestrian improvements to put curb sidewalk between Petrovisky Road and the post office. We've got a lot more work to do on that street, but at least we've got our foot in the door. And then Transportation Systems Division Airport, we will have completed the airport master plan draft by the end of this year, and we've completed the design of the airport tower remodel, and the construction of the tower improvements, seismic improvements, will happen next year. Maybe this is a good place to break off, because I'm going from what we've accomplished to what we will accomplish. I
think that's
break off
perfect.
at this point.
Are there any questions for Greg before we can adjourn committee of the whole and we reconvene next week? All right, thank you, Greg.
Okay, thanks.
We will see you all back here in 15 minutes, full council.